So if you remember a few weeks back, we actually took apart a Joy-Con and replaced the analog stick because there were a lot of issues around the Joy-Con controllers drifting. So you're playing Zelda and all of a sudden Link just happens to run off a cliff despite you not even touching the joystick. Seems to be becoming more and more of a common issue as we've gone along. I assume that's from just parts slowly over time degrading and becoming defective. But there seems to be an issue with the actual analog stick for people who have only had their Joy-Con controllers for a month, 2 months or so, which is pretty quick for it to start drifting. Now, after doing that video, a lot of people in the comments were mentioning that they had cleaned it, but that was only a temporary fix, and why is this happening? Why are these sticks drifting? Well, there was a pretty cool post that was made on Imager, and then it was also shared around everywhere on Reddit and other places as well, of someone actually taking apart one of the analog sticks and kind of pointing out what they think the issue is. And I figure we'll actually take one of these analog sticks apart. I actually have one that we can pretty much sacrifice, since based on the teardown of it, I don't think it really goes together very easily or well. But I figure we can actually sacrifice it, take a look, and help spread the word on what the defective part seems to be. That way, maybe Nintendo will change it in the future with like a quiet revision. All right, so the analog stick is pretty straightforward. Remember when we replaced it before? This part's only like 10 bucks. That's generally why I tell people to just go ahead and replace it, because unfortunately the underlying issue that we're gonna get into is kind of hard to just outright fix like permanently. And the analog stick itself is gonna be a problem probably for the foreseeable future unless they end up redesigning it. Now, we actually have some clips around here on the edges that'll let us pretty much get directly into the analog stick. Has one ribbon cable coming off the side here, and underneath of this is actually a board that we can check out as well. So I'm actually going to start by popping these pieces of metal off, and that should get us into the little stick. Okay, so after a bit of a fight, mostly because the metal here is like wrapped around the plastic, so it's pretty difficult to get off. You have to bend it off real bad, and that's how you kind of get these to actually pop off, and even then you gotta kind of pull at it to pop it off there. You can bend these back, and you could probably clip this all back together. But again, these analog sticks are like 10 bucks. I don't know if it's worth getting this far into it to fix a part that's this cheap. Now, the way this appears to work, there is, of course, a spring. You have your washer to kind of hold that together here, and that obviously puts pressure on the stick so that it sticks around, stays around. And that's how you kind of get it to rotate without this falling through and keep tension on it. Now, it appears to track these white pieces here with these metal. So we have these metal contacts, as you can see there, and they move back and forth, up and down. And the way that works is they run along this little circuit board here. And this is kind of where the issue starts to pop up, and why a lot of us are believing that there is some sort of drifting or issue here. So this rests underneath of it. We, of course, have our button. So when you click in your stick, you can kind of see it pushes that down. That's how you get that click when you push down on the stick. Now, if I take one of these guys out, one of these pieces here, let me just turn this upside down and grab them. You can see all the moving parts that just kind of fall out too, by the way. So this is not a fun thing to take apart anyway. These metal contacts actually rest on these black pieces here against it, and these move back and forth. And what they appear to do is have resistance that's measured by the stick, and pretty much tells it where the orientation or where this thumbstick is while you're moving it around. The issue we run into here is this is metal, and this, as people are pointing out, is like a graphite surface. So it's pretty easy to rub against it with metal. Like, for example, I have my tweezers here. If I start to rub against it, you'll start to get all kinds of powder and junk starting to come off of it. And that's kind of what we're running into right now, is that these parts here are very fragile. And as you're rubbing against it, you'll have stuff start to come off of it, and then that can actually throw everything off. So if you have all this debris in here, there's a good chance that that's actually going to make your stick feel like it's, well, the circuit board think your stick is somewhere else, or if it's in the resting neutral position, if it starts detecting that there is something else, I guess, on here, it'll start to slowly drift at that point. And the issue we run into is there's no easy way to fix it. It's just a design flaw, essentially, at like the manufacturing level. Now, these are pretty basic sticks. We've ordered these before, and they are exactly the same, pretty much. It seems that Nintendo, at the time of creating their Joy-Con, has picked just a bad, I guess, just a bad part to use for the long term. Now, there's a chance it might not affect you overall. I think this is going to be a case-by-case basis, but that explains really why spraying electronics cleaner in there will fix your stick, but maybe temporarily, because I've noticed that you can kind of get these marks, like these little grooves in here as you use them. And once you kind of break the coating of the graphite or the top of this, then I've noticed that it really starts to come off. So if you have not broken kind of the top coating here, like I actually had a scratch at it there for a bit with my tweezers. If you have not broken the top yet, it won't, I think, become a problem. But as soon as you start to kind of scrape away at the top there, which can happen over time with these tiny little pieces of metal in here, that's kind of scraping against there, then you start to run into an issue because it'll just keep basically grinding it down after you get through that layer. So that seems to be where we are right now. That seems to be the problem with this. And opening it up to try to fix it doesn't make a lot of sense either, because even if you clean it, you put it back together, you're still going to run into that problem. And you see the kind of the pain that goes into fixing these things. And for 10 bucks to replace it will at least get you back up and running. But I do have, I guess, questions with this part in particular, with that, the strategy to detect where the stick is and everything. Going forward, I think they could probably change this with a new JoyCon revision. They don't even have to tell us that it's a revision. They just kind of put it out there. But that seems to be the underlying problem that we're running into. We have metal basically on a softer material here that is then tracking the movements, and as it is used, if it breaks kind of the top coating, it'll start grinding down. We have debris in the way of basically where it's detecting where you are even in the neutral position, because then you have debris resting on it and it'll start moving. Can this be fixed as it is now? Maybe, if it's new. So this is actually a newer stick that hasn't really had much wear on it. I'm sure there's probably, I have to look up, I know there's coating you could probably put on here that would probably lengthen its life by strengthening its durability. I'd have questions if it would affect how well I can detect where the stick is. But does anyone really want to go through all of this just to do that? Probably not. Like, I don't even really feel like putting this back together because it's such a pain to do to get everything in place. It reminds me, it gives me like horrible flashbacks of taking apart an N64 stick. But this is something else, and it's something that I think Nintendo would have to address, because these stick drifting issues are starting to really show up more and more online, and I don't think it's going to go away unless they do something to change this stick. And it seems to be as simple as that. There's a circuit board underneath of the analog stick you're using that is having trenches pretty much dug out from the pieces of metal that are then tracking where the analog stick is. I'd like to see Nintendo do a quiet revision of it. I think it's something they could do, and it would just help to obviously strengthen the quality of a JoyCon controller when you buy it, because they're like, what, 80 bucks for a pair? So they're not exactly cheap, and the parts we've seen are like 10 bucks for an analog stick, so I have to assume it's even cheaper for Nintendo, maybe $1 or $2, to be honest, with how much they probably order in bulk and put it in like the manufacturing line in China. So I would like to see them maybe put a little more money into these analog sticks to make sure they work well for you if you buy them. I mean, the Pro Controller, I think, is still probably the best way to play, but people are still going to use Joy-Cons for handheld mode, so we'll see, though, going forward. I'll leave a link down below to that imager if you want to check out a bit more information about it and go through it as well at your own pace and see all the pictures and everything they took. It's pretty cool, though. Let me know what you guys think about this down below, though. Make sure you like the video if you liked it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.